All right, so are you ready to go deep? Today, we're going to be talking about something maybe a little personal, but also super fascinating, and that is female masturbation.
Okay.
Now, before you're like, oh, I know all about that, stick with us because
Right.
we're using this book, Tickle Your Fancy, A Woman's Guide to Sexual Self-Pleasure
Hmm.
by Dr. Sadie Allison. And honestly, this book is amazing. It's
All
like,
right.
it really is. And what we want to do in this deep dive is give you a really solid understanding of, first of all, female sexual anatomy,
Sure.
also the health benefits of masturbation, because there are a lot,
Oh, yeah.
and then also like how to actually achieve orgasm. So we're going to be talking about all of that today.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to say up front that we are going to be talking about this stuff openly and honestly,
Right.
but we're going to be respectful and sensitive.
Of course.
So just so you know that going in,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that's so interesting about this book is that it really does try to bust some of those myths about female masturbation.
yes.
I think there's this idea that
Yeah.
it's somehow still taboo. And it's so weird. It's like, why are we still whispering about this in 2025?
It's so crazy, right?
Especially when you consider the fact that an estimated 97% of females have actually masturbated by the age of 21.
Wow, 97%.
I mean, so if you're out there thinking you're the only one, clearly you're not.
Right, you're definitely not alone.
Not at all. You are in very good company.
So then why all the secrecy?
Well, Dr. Allison really talks about how women are just inundated with all of these negative messages
Okay.
about their sexuality.
Yeah.
So it's like, from a young age, like, don't touch yourself, or, it's
Wait, don't do that.
dirty or whatever. And so I think this book is so great because it kind of helps women really reclaim that
Okay.
and really reframe self-pleasure as something that's very powerful.
Yeah, I like that. Like
It's about self-knowledge.
yeah, it's about knowing yourself better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you know your body, you know what you like, you're less likely to be swayed by all those negative messages.
You're less likely to be influenced by all those,
Bad messages.
Right, exactly. So yeah, it's about like taking control. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But now I'm curious about the benefits.
Okay.
Like aside from just, feeling good.
Right. Well, I mean, there are the obvious benefits, right?
Sure.
I mean, it feels good,
Uh-huh.
but there are also lots of benefits beyond just the purely physical ones.
Okay.
One of the things that Dr. Allison really emphasizes is that masturbation can be a huge boost for your self-esteem because it's all about, exploring your body and discovering what brings you joy.
Interesting.
So when you're comfortable with your own body and you know how to please yourself, you're going to feel more confident.
It's like,
And that translates
yeah,
into
makes sense.
all other areas of your life.
Totally. Yeah. So it's about confidence.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think it can also really help in your relationships as well.
Okay. How so? I've always wondered that.
I mean, if you know what you enjoy,
Yeah.
you're much more likely to be able to communicate that to a partner,
Right.
which I think is huge, right? Because then
It is here.
that leads to a much more fulfilling and satisfying sexual connection for both of you.
Yeah.
And, can also be really helpful if you and your partner, let's say, have different libidos
Okay.
or different schedules.
That makes sense.
It kind of helps to bridge that gap.
Totally. So it's about like taking responsibility
Exactly.
for your own pleasure
Exactly.
instead of putting all the pressure on your partner.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a really good point.
Yeah. And then, of course, there are also the physical benefits, too.
Right. Like, what are some of those?
We can't forget about the power of the orgasm.
I mean, those endorphins that are released,
Right.
those aren't just about making you feel good in the moment.
Right.
They can really help you relax. They can help you sleep better.
Oh, wow.
And some women even find that it helps with things like menstrual cramps.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And, of course, it's the safest sex you can have.
That's true. Yeah.
So, win-win all around.
It's like a win-win on all these levels. Okay, so we've established that it's healthy,
Right.
it's beneficial, it's incredibly common, but now I'm curious about like the actual like mechanics of it all.
Okay.
So Dr. Allison spends a lot of time in this book talking about
Yes.
female anatomy and specifically what she calls erogenous zones.
Mm-hmm.
I've always kind of wondered, like, what exactly is an erogenous zone?
Right.
I mean, I think I know the basics, but
Well, it's interesting because erogenous zones are basically any part of your body that's sensitive to touch
okay.
and can produce sexual pleasure. And you're right. It's not just limited to what we think of as the obvious.
So we're talking
I mean, we're talking nipples, breasts, the anus,
no.
even earlobes for some people. So it really varies.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And that's part of what makes exploring your body so fascinating.
Totally.
Because what might feel intensely pleasurable for one woman might be completely different for another.
Yeah.
So it's all about finding what works for you.
I have to say, talking about all this openly is still kind of new for me.
It's understandable. I mean, it's not something that we're necessarily taught to talk about openly and honestly, right?
No, we're not. And I think that's why information like this is so
Exactly.
important.
It's about knowledge is power, right?
Yeah, totally.
The more we understand our bodies, more empowered we are to experience pleasure.
Yeah.
To advocate for our needs. So, maybe we start with some basic definitions, right?
Okay.
So the vulva, for instance,
is
a term that encompasses all of the external female genitalia.
So that would be like...
So just talking about the labia.
Right. Clitoris, the vaginal opening.
Got it.
And it's important to note that, vulvas come in all shapes and sizes and colors.
Right.
Dr. Allison really emphasizes this. There's no one ideal or perfect vulva.
Right.
They're all unique.
I like that.
They're all beautiful in their own way.
That's a good message, especially in today's world.
Exactly.
With like all these images of what's supposed to be desirable.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's talk about the clitoris.
Okay.
I think most people have at least heard that word.
Right.
But could you break down what it actually is and why it's so important?
Absolutely. So, think of the clitoris as kind of like your pleasure headquarters, right? It's literally the only organ in the human body that its sole purpose is pleasure.
Oh, wow. I did not.
Not reproduction. And it's not just as one tiny little spot.
Wait, really?
It actually has a glans, which is the head.
Okay.
It has shafts, which are like legs that extend internally.
Wow.
And it has a hood.
And so stimulating any of these parts can lead to some, really incredibly intense sensations.
That's amazing. Who knew?
Right.
There's so much.
It's a lot more complex than I think a lot of people realize.
And we're taught.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
And it's designed for pleasure, so why not, right?
So, okay, so now that we kind of understand a little bit better about the anatomy, now I'm thinking about, how to actually explore all of this.
Right, yeah. No, that's a great question.
So, what are some of the things that we should be thinking about?
Well, Dr. Allison really goes into this in detail in the book. She has a whole section on, different techniques and how to really set the mood to have a pleasurable experience.
So it's not just about, jumping right in.
It's not just about,
There's an art to it.
Yeah, think of it like creating a sensual experience.
Right.
For yourself, You wouldn't just, rush a romantic evening.
I see your point.
Right, so it's the same kind of thing.
So, okay, so what are some of the things that she suggests?
Well, it can be as simple as just dimming the lights, lighting some candles, maybe putting on some music that makes you feel relaxed and sensual.
So it's about really creating a space.
Yeah, create a space where you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And you can really let go.
Yeah, okay.
And don't underestimate the power of a warm bath.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's not just about hygiene.
Right.
It's really about allowing yourself to unwind.
Yeah.
And really focus on your body.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
She also mentions looking in the mirror.
She does, yeah.
Is that really necessary? I have to say that sounds a little
I understand.
Intimidating.
Get it.
Yeah.
But it's not about judging your body or comparing it to anybody else's.
Right.
It's really about getting to know your own anatomy in a new way.
Okay.
Really appreciating the beauty and the uniqueness of your own body.
So it's about embracing it and becoming more familiar with all the different parts.
Exactly.
Okay.
And don't forget about those erogenous zones that we talked about.
Right.
Exploring them in front of the mirror can really help you understand how your body responds to touch.
Okay.
What feels good.
Yeah. So it's like a visual map to your own...
Exactly. Like a roadmap. Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
Now, she also talks about grooming.
Okay.
Which, is totally personal preference.
Sure.
But some women find that trimming or shaping their pubic hair really enhances their experience.
So it's about feeling confident and comfortable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In your own skin.
Okay. So it's about taking care of your body and...
Yeah, it's part of self-care.
And that can boost your confidence too.
Absolutely.
If you feel good about how you look.
It all plays a part.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Speaking of feeling good, she also talks a lot about breathing.
Yes.
which I wouldn't have thought that would be.
Yeah, breathing is huge.
So crucial.
It's so important.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised how much of a difference it makes.
Okay.
Just like any physical activity, sexual arousal increases your body's need for oxygen.
Right.
So those deep rhythmic breaths, they really help to relax you.
Okay.
They help to heighten your sensitivity.
Wow.
And they can even intensify your orgasms.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I never realized that breathing could have such
It's a powerful...
a profound impact. Wow.
It is.
Okay, so we've set the mood, we're relaxed, we're breathing deeply.
Right.
What's next?
So now it's time to really start exploring different techniques.
Okay.
And there's a whole world to discover here.
Like what?
But I think, we've got to start with clitoral stimulation.
Okay.
It's really the foundation of it all.
Okay, so the clitoris, we've
Yeah.
talked about the anatomy.
Yeah.
But now let's get into how to actually stimulate it.
Okay, so Dr. Allison, she suggests a variety of stroking styles.
Okay.
Everything from gentle up and down motions to circular rubs, even using multiple fingers
Okay.
to create different sensations.
So it's about kind of experimenting and finding what works.
It's about finding what works best for you.
For you, yeah.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Okay, so what are some of the different stroking styles that...
Okay, so one simple technique is to just gently glide your fingertip up and down
Okay.
or side to side across the clitoris.
Okay.
Start with light pressure and then gradually increase it as you become more aroused.
That sounds pretty straightforward.
It is, yeah. And then, if you want something a little more adventurous,
Yeah.
Dr. Allison suggests a technique called rolling between fingers. So you basically take your thumb and index finger, you kind of place them around the clitoris,
Okay.
and then gently squeeze and roll it.
Oh, okay, that
That's
sounds
a good one.
interesting. What about circular motions?
Oh, yeah. Circular rubs are a favorite for a lot of women.
Yeah.
So you basically just take two fingers, you place them side by side over the clitoris,
Okay.
and then rub in a circular motion.
Okay.
And again, you can play around with the pressure, the speed,
Yeah.
see what feels good.
I remember reading about drawing figure eights with your fingertip.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
That seems like kind of a fun way to mix things up.
It is. It's a great way to stimulate not only the clitoris, but also the surrounding areas.
Oh, okay.
So you could do small, focused figure eights.
Right.
Or you can do larger ones that cover more of the vulva.
Wow.
So it's really about being creative.
It's about getting creative.
And exploring different ways to touch your body.
And just paying attention to,
Yeah.
what feels good.
As you're experimenting with these techniques,
Yeah.
really pay attention to your body's responses.
Yeah.
Like, what feels pleasurable? What makes you want more? What might be too intense?
Right, so it's about being mindful and really tuning into your own
Exactly.
sensations.
Mindfulness is key here.
Now, while the clitoris is kind of the star of the show,
Yep.
there's another area inside you that deserves some attention.
Yes,
The G-spot.
the elusive G-spot.
I've heard so much about it, but I'm still not sure I totally understand what it is.
Okay, well, it is a bit of a mystery for some.
Yeah.
So the G-spot is basically a small area of spongy tissue
Okay.
that's located on the front wall of the vagina,
Okay.
about 2 to 3 inches in.
And what's so special about it?
Well, stimulating the G-spot can lead to some incredibly intense sensations for some women.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And it can also trigger female ejaculation,
Yep.
which we can talk about
We'll get to that.
a little bit later.
Okay.
But it's definitely a spot that's worth exploring.
So how do you actually find it?
Okay, so Dr. Allison suggests inserting 2 fingers into your vagina
Okay.
and then curling them upward
Okay.
towards your belly button.
Got it.
And you're basically feeling for a slightly textured area that feels a little bit different
Okay.
from the surrounding tissue.
Okay. And once you've found it, what's the best way to stimulate it?
Well, you can use your fingers.
Okay.
You can also use a dildo or even a vibrator that's specifically designed for G-spot play.
Okay.
And generally, firm rhythmic pressure is usually more effective
Okay.
than light stroking.
Now, I have to ask, is it normal to feel like you need to pee when
Yeah.
you're stimulating the G-spot?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Remember, the G-spot is located pretty close to the urethra,
Right.
so that sensation is perfectly normal.
Good to know.
And for some women, it can actually be a sign
Okay.
that they're getting close to a G-spot orgasm.
Interesting.
So pay attention to those sensations.
So we've covered clitoral stimulation.
Yeah.
We've covered G-spot play.
Yes.
Now, what about vaginal penetration?
Okay, yeah. I mean, that can definitely add another layer of sensation.
Right.
And, there are so many different ways to explore that during masturbation.
What are some of the things?
Well, I mean, you can start with something as simple as finger stimulation,
Okay.
right? So gently insert 1 or 2 fingers into your vagina.
Okay.
And just explore.
Okay.
Move them in and out, circle them around.
Okay.
You can press against the vaginal walls.
Got it.
It's really about discovering what feels good for you.
Okay, and what about using sex toys? I know
Yes.
Dr. Allison talks a lot about dildos in her book.
She does.
And I have to say, I'm a little overwhelmed by the sheer
I know.
variety that's out there.
There are a lot of options.
Do you have any tips for choosing one?
I mean, my best advice would be to start with something smaller.
Okay.
And then you can work your way up if you want to experiment with different sizes.
Okay.
As far as materials go, silicone is a great option. It's body safe, it's easy to clean,
Okay.
and it retains heat well.
Good to know. Okay, so we've got fingers.
Right.
We've got dildos.
Yes.
What are some of the, techniques that you can try with penetration?
Well, Dr. Allison suggests experimenting with different depths and speeds.
Okay.
You can also try tilting your hips at different angles to create unique sensations.
Got it.
And don't forget about clitoral stimulation during penetration.
Right, so it's about stimulating,
Yeah, multiple erogenous zones at once.
multiple zones at once to
Something
really have, a more intense experience.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're getting somewhere.
Mhm.
Now, before we move on from this, I have to ask
Okay.
about lubrication.
Okay, yeah, lube is so important.
So why is that so important? I always thought it was for people who, needed a little extra
That's a common misconception.
help.
Lubrication is really beneficial for everyone,
Okay.
regardless of your natural lubrication levels.
Got it.
First and foremost, it reduces friction,
Okay.
which makes penetration much more comfortable
Okay.
and enjoyable.
Okay.
But it also helps to protect the delicate tissues
Okay.
in the vagina and the anus
Right.
from tearing or irritation.
So it's about pleasure and safety.
Exactly.
Okay.
And there are so many different types of lube out there.
Okay.
You've got water-based, silicone-based.
Okay.
Experiment to find what works best for your body.
Okay.
But just remember, if you're using condoms,
Yeah.
you always want to stick with a water-based lube
Okay.
because silicone can damage latex.
Good to know.
Right.
Now, I'm curious about another type of sex toy that seems to have quite a reputation.
Okay.
Vibrators.
Yes, vibrators. They do have a reputation, don't they?
They do, and for good reason.
And for good reason.
I mean, they can provide incredibly intense stimulation and often lead to
powerful orgasms.
Yeah, so I get why they're so popular.
It's understandable.
But again, there's so many different kinds.
There are.
Where do you even begin?
Oh, there are tons of options.
Okay.
You've got your classic wand vibrators.
Okay.
You've got smaller bullet vibrators. You've even got ones that are specifically designed for G-spot stimulation.
Wow, a vibrator for every occasion.
It seems that way, doesn't it?
It does. Any tips for using them?
I would say, just like with any other technique,
Yeah.
start slowly, experiment to find what feels good.
Okay.
You can use a vibrator on its own, or you can combine it with other techniques
Right.
to create an even more intense experience.
Okay, so there's lots of different ways to
Lots of possibilities.
experiment.
Exactly.
Dr. Allison calls the vibrator a woman's best friend, and I'm starting to
I can see why.
see why.
Yeah.
Now, I know we've talked about a lot of the, more commonly known, I guess,
Yeah.
erogenous zones and techniques, but Dr. Allison also mentions anal play in her book,
She does.
which is something that I think is still
Yes,
pretty taboo for a lot of people.
it is.
I have to say, it's not something I've ever really considered,
Sure.
but I'm open to learning more.
Okay, well, female masturbation in general.
Yeah.
Anal play has been unfairly stigmatized,
Right.
but, there's nothing inherently wrong or unhealthy about it.
Okay.
And for some women, anal stimulation can be incredibly pleasurable.
So for someone who's totally new to this, what are some ways to kind of explore it?
So, as with any form of penetration, lubrication is key.
Right. Okay.
You can start by just gently stimulating the anus with your fingertip.
Okay.
And then, if you want to explore further,
Yeah.
you can gradually work your way up to using a small dildo
Mm-hmm.
or an anal plug.
Anal plug. Wow.
It can be quite intense.
Okay.
But again, it's all about going at your own pace,
Right.
listening to your body.
Yeah.
And if anal penetration isn't for you,
Yeah.
that's totally fine.
That's totally fine.
There are plenty of other ways to experience pleasure.
That's a good reminder. Yeah. You don't have to
You don't have to try everything.
do everything.
It's about what works for you.
Yeah. Okay.
So now Dr. Allison, she also talks about some more unconventional techniques,
Okay.
like water play,
Okay.
even using everyday objects,
Really?
which I think is kind of fun.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk water play.
Okay.
What are some fun ways to, like, incorporate water?
Well, something as simple as lying in the bathtub
Okay.
and positioning your vulva under the running faucet
Okay.
can be incredibly pleasurable.
Oh, that sounds nice.
And you can adjust the water pressure and the temperature
Okay.
to create different sensations.
What about shower heads?
Shower heads, yes.
Bye.
The focus spray of a shower head can be quite stimulating,
Okay.
especially when it's directed at the clitoris.
Right.
And you can even buy shower head attachments
Really?
that are specifically designed
Wow.
for this purpose.
I'm seeing the appeal.
Yeah.
Now, what about those everyday objects that she was talking about?
Well, she really encourages people to get creative
Okay.
with things like pillows, socks, even furniture.
Wow.
But of course, always be careful and avoid anything with sharp edges or rough surfaces.
Right. Safety first.
Safety first, but it's also about being playful,
Okay.
experimenting, having fun.
It sounds like there's a whole world of possibilities to explore
There really is.
that we haven't even talked about today.
We've just scratched the surface.
Scratched the surface, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, this is amazing.
It's a lot to discover.
I feel like we've covered so much.
We have.
But is there anything else we should touch on before we wrap up this deep dive?
I think we've talked a lot about the physical aspects of self-pleasure,
Yeah.
but there's also a really important mental and emotional side to it as well.
Right, so it's not just about the mechanics.
It's not just about the mechanics.
There's more to it.
It's about really connecting with your sensuality
Okay.
on a deeper level.
So how can someone start tapping into that?
Well, Dr. Allison, she suggests incorporating mindfulness techniques
Okay.
into your self-pleasure practice.
Like what kind of things?
Well, it could be as simple as, focusing on your breath,
Okay.
really paying attention to the sensations in your body,
Okay.
being present in the moment.
So it's about really tuning in and
Tuning in.
appreciating the experience.
Yeah.
It's almost like a form of meditation.
It is, yeah. It's like a sensual meditation.
Yeah, I like that.
And it can also help you to identify any thoughts or feelings
Yeah.
that might be blocking your pleasure.
Because I'm sure we all have those, right? Like from past experiences or, just...
We all have baggage.
Yeah, baggage.
Societal conditioning, all of that.
So being mindful can help us to kind of become aware of those things and then start to
Exactly.
work through them.
It's about bringing those things to the surface
Okay, that makes sense.
so you can start to address them.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to go back to something we talked about earlier.
Sure.
Female ejaculation.
Yes.
Because I think there's still a lot of
Oh, there are so many myths
misconceptions about it.
and misinformation out there.
Yeah.
So, some people think it's just urine, which is not true at all.
Okay.
Female ejaculate is a distinct fluid
Okay.
that's produced by the Skene's glands, which are located near the urethra.
Got it. So it's a totally different fluid.
Totally different.
Okay.
And the experience itself can vary.
Okay.
Some women describe it as a gush of fluid. Others experience it as more of a trickle or a series of spurts.
Okay.
And for some women, it's accompanied by very intense, pleasurable sensations.
So it's really kind of unique to each...
It's unique to each person.
Oh, man.
And whether or not you ejaculate doesn't make you any more or less sexual.
Right.
It's just another fascinating aspect
Okay.
of female sexuality.
Well, I think it's safe to say that we've busted a lot of myths.
We have busted some myths today.
The female masturbation.
Yes.
And hopefully we've empowered our listeners
I really think
to
so.
approach it with
More curiosity.
more curiosity, yeah.
More confidence.
More confidence and maybe even
A sense of adventure.
a sense of adventure
Yeah.
because ultimately it's all about
Exploring your body.
exploring your body. Yeah.
Discovering what brings you joy.
And embracing your sexuality
Without shame.
without shame or judgment.
Exactly.
It's about taking ownership of your pleasure
Yes.
and celebrating your body.
yes. It's a gift.
Well said. And if you're feeling inspired to continue this journey,
Yes.
I highly encourage you to check out Dr. Allison's book, Tickle Your Fancy.
It's a great resource.
It really is. It's packed with even more
Yeah.
tips and techniques and insights.
And remember,
Yeah.
your sexuality is a journey, not a destination.
Ooh, that's good.
So enjoy the exploration.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Absolutely.
We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.